We drove out to the mountains, down some back roads and old logging roads, forestry roads into the mountains, and drove as far as we could till we got to an equestrian staging point where people bring their horse trailers and they take off with their horses into the mountains. Well, we pulled up and took our packs out and started loading everything up and basically running on no sleep. But once you get out there and it was daylight and you see the mountains, we all got a crazy burst of energy. So I've been wanting to explore this valley for a few years actually. I was just really blown away by the landscape, the vast wilderness, and I couldn't wait to get back there someday. I knew that I would be back there someday. It was like a dream come true to be able to set foot on that trail and see that river. We're going to the Clearwater River. It's just in between there's a mountain there, one over there, and it flows down from some glaciers, and there's a couple lakes.
How long will that take?
2 or 3 days.
How far away is that?
About 49 to 50 something, somewhere in there. First time you see the mountains after not being out there for so long, it's like coming home to a place that isn't my home, but it felt like it was my home. And the mountains look like they're so close, even when they're really far away, because they're just that big, and they just kind of have a way of just giving you energy, whether it's just a mental boost or whatever. We all got a crazy burst of energy, and that's kind of what we traveled on all day. We ran into some people on horseback. I was really surprised to know they had come from much further down the valley, and that there was actually horse trails that went all the way up to the national park boundary.
Have a fun time.
Yeah, you guys do. Yeah. You just out for the day, or?
No, actually we just came back from up at Harrison's Flat.
One of us has got to move out here and have a ranch.
A ranch.
We hiked for the afternoon, finally made it down to the Clearwater River. First dip of our Nalgene's into the clear glacier water that makes up the river. You know, to dip our feet in there and drink some ice cold water fresh off the land was pretty awesome. Spot right up there. Doubles as
A smokescreen.
smokestack. Where we stopped to have our snack, that's where we first really entered the mountain range. We come from the foothills, and that's the first time you're just surrounded by mountains on either side, straight ahead of you. Behind us were the foothills, and that's an incredible feeling to be closed in, walled in with the mountains on either side, and know you're going further. At some point, 360 around you is going to be just massive walls of mountains. And so we hiked on, and the landscape also changed. We went from walking through grass and forest and like meadows to cruising a gravel bar. So we're at about the 15K mark right now, and where that mountain comes down, there's a little pass through there, and there's a creek called Scalp Creek, And that's like a good heavy third, so I think we're doing pretty good. We found a nice patch of sand here, so just have to move a few rocks and it's a nice open area. We got there and immediately we started to just make camp. We didn't really talk to each other for the next couple hours, just gathered firewood on our own and I set up the tarp. It was a really neat moment. You had the sun setting, the music of the river just rolling through. It was really soothing and it was present on our whole trip. It ended up being just a beautiful night out there, like clear skies, of stars, it was incredible. The stars in the mountains are brighter than I've seen anywhere else. We woke up the morning of day 2 under this tarp and the sun shining down on the other side of the valley, which was shrouded in darkness when we had arrived the day before. So it was a brand new view and it was kind of chilly in the air, but the sun was kind of starting to warm us, had that hot fire. We made our first coffees out there. Oh man, was that ever tasty. That was a great way to start the day. Everything just became super vivid, like wow, this is it, we're really here. Last night was pretty nice until the fire went out, and I think we got a few hours of sleep after that and then woke up kind of chilly.
Wind licking you.
Yeah, the wind was just coming through and robbing us of heat. We'll have to set the tarp up a little different next time. But today we've got about another 20K, 25K. So we started hiking. We were following the river and there was game trails we were following. There was trails people had made with their horses, but they weren't like established trails. A lot of times they just led into just terrible bush. We were hiking gravel bars and every once in a while the river would snake over and force us up into the bush. And it was just the thickest, nastiest stuff, scraping you. And so we were beating ourselves up. We didn't realize that we didn't have to, that there was actually better ways to go about it.
Oh, I think we'll be able to walk down there again soon.
We weren't making the greatest timing because we were having to walk over all this blowdown. It was horrible. But we were beat up, tired, sweaty at this point, and we took our packs off, and I remember we dunk our heads under the water and had a big drink and instant brain freeze because it's all glacier water.
Let's go.
Oh, so good. Oh, it was the freshest, cleanest, coldest water you could ever imagine. where that mountain there comes down, I believe it's right there is where we had to go around. We made our first crossing. It was quite shallow. It's the first time we got our feet wet. And then we ended up finding the horse cart trail, which really made things a lot easier. That's cool. See how there's claws? The cat ones are round, and you can't see claws.
It's a big one.
That's a big wolf. At one point, Jordan and I were kind of close to each other, and Matt had slowed down to take a few shots and whatever. We were in a very thickly carpeted forest with deep moss, like knee-high moss, literally. And he accidentally fell over on his back like a turtle. He got stuck in the moss, and he shouted for us, but the moss acted like soundproofing, and even though Jordan and I weren't far from it, we heard nothing. It was just silence. And he is stuck on his back like a turtle.
So I fell down in some thick brush, some spongy ground, about 20 minutes ago. Ended up getting separated from the guys. I ended up finding a trail, but I have no idea where they are. I guess voices don't carry very far, so hopefully find them pretty soon. On the bright side, can't ask for any better weather than this.
Jordan and I went quite a ways before we realized, well, Matt's not just behind that next corner. He's like, we have no idea where Matt is.
At last, I found him. One more pilgrim found.
As good as it gets.
Nice ramen.
Ramen noodles.
Just developing. Yeah, that one hurts a lot. Have to tape it.
Not just a guess.
Somewhere down in here, I would guess. We need to go southwest, so that's the direction that this trail goes. So I guess we take that one. We know the river's right there, so if this pulls too far away, then we scoot back down. So we had a kind of an easy path to 40 Mile for the most part. And what 40 Mile is an old Ranger Patrol station on this beautiful flats, just meadows, wild horses, and you're up, I don't know, maybe 50 feet above the riverbed. And it's this beautiful park-like area with a lookout. And that's where Scalp Creek comes through and meets the Clearwater. And it was a beautiful area, beautiful area. So we stopped and we're kind of just enjoying it, and then ended up packing my stuff up and taking off and just saying, well, you guys come when you're ready. I'm gonna keep hiking here. And I went down and I took the trail across Scalp Creek. They went down and they took the wrong trail, which led to nowhere, and then kept bushwhacking, thinking that I might be just around the corner. And they ended up really in dire straits.
We lost Clint. We traveled for 40 minutes by ourselves in the wrong direction.
Wasted a lot of energy. Could have made a really grave error if we didn't turn back when we did, but luckily.
But we turned back and we decided to go back, and we ended up finding a trail. So we're heading on the trail now, and hopefully we're going in the right direction now, and hopefully we find Clint.
It's pretty much the only logical trail. So if it isn't, I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna have to set up camp, maybe by ourselves, and try to find him in the morning. If he doesn't just keep pushing on without us.
I didn't think we were gonna find you. We thought you were a goner. We thought we were goners.
I thought you guys just didn't come with me.
Well, technically we didn't.
Well, no, you didn't. I thought you guys stayed back at that clearing. But I got out here and then fished for like half an hour and read for half an hour, and then decided to come back and found out you guys were on your own journey.
I went right and you went left. I'm glad you came back for us.
All as well.
I always come back for my man.
A man of integrity.
Thank you.
Hold on.
And then we continued on and made a crossing that was pretty difficult. Like the water's so cold that after being in it for a second, 2 seconds, it hurts. Like it's painful. We crossed at the shallowest part of it, and it's just super powerful water, and you got your pack on your back. It almost wants to like lift you up off the rocks at that height, at that depth. It's just so powerful. It's moving so quickly. It was getting really late, so it was looking like we were gonna have to set up our campsite in a pretty uncomfortable spot and just rough it out. When Matt looked at some just thick bush and he said, I feel like we should just walk through there. And that's the last thing any of us wanted to do, was bushwhack anymore. We decided, well, it's not gonna be any worse than where we're gonna have to camp right now. So decided to do it. We walked through and it opened up into this oasis. It was just like parkland. And there was a little stream coming through, and there ended up being this gorgeous trapper's cabin. Incredible. In the middle of nowhere, on a height of land overlooking the Clearwater River and the mountains, and it was just such a treat.
Very cool.
It feels so good to know we're done for the day.
And it's a super peaceful,
Yeah.
perfect area.
Man, makes me wish I had my trapper's license.
So what does he do?
You wake up this every day.
Now, do you need a permit and a license?
If he uses it for trapping. A lot of guys will get trapping licenses,
Yeah.
and they stop trapping, or they keep using the leased land.
Yes. Okay.
So that's,
Well, it's a pretty crazy
Yeah.
existence.
it's amazing to think that in the midst of our hustle bustle society, there's still ways to live that are close to the land like that. And this guy had it better and was wealthier because of this cabin in the wilderness that he didn't cost him hardly a dime. This guy doesn't own the land, but he has legal right to build on the land and to store equipment and stuff here.
Within his allotted space.
Yeah, but he's supposed to be using it for trapping.
Yeah.
But
Well, looks like he trapped us.
he did. He
I'm
caught
happy
us.
he did.
It was literally like a park there. The trees, all the branches were cleared up to a certain height, so it was super easy We had a fire pit there already, and there was room for us to hang our hammocks perfectly, like all in a circle, semicircle around this fire, all near each other. And oh, did it feel good to just get cradled in that thing and just kind of swing all night and go to sleep, being as sore as we were. It was a beautiful evening. We woke up in the morning, took our time having breakfast, which was kind of the way we did things the whole trip. We got some whiskey jacks come by and steal some of our food. Actually, we took some of Jordan's trail mix while he was, I don't know what he was doing, but it was Matt and I. These whiskey jacks come around and we decided to take some of Jordan's trail mix and give it to them. We didn't sacrifice any of our own food, which is, I didn't even think about that till now. Pouring boiling hot water into a cup that's sitting in your lap. Terrible idea. Oh, just the possibilities. Today we're gonna attempt to reach a place called Indian Head. It's a patrol cabin. So it should be a nice spot where we can hang our hammocks again and hopefully catch some fish. This trapper has it better than most multimillionaires, and it probably didn't cost more than anything. Thousands and thousands of acres of land to do what he wants on, and a crazy view, and 0 neighbors. I remember there was a trail that went off to the right, so we started following this trail, and there was horse hoof prints and things. So we're going, and then oh, it forked off again, and then it forked off again, and then it forked off again, until we realized we're following an elk trail. Assuming the horse trail is still up in there. Let's keep going. No idea where we were. I mean, you can't really get lost because you're in this valley. If you have any sense and don't panic, you know you can go this way or that way. There's really, but it was really tough going. Like, we're climbing over these trees, falling. So we finally decided, all right, let's just backtrack.
Kind of lost?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably, the trail's probably way up there. We'd intersect it eventually, probably, but it could be. Who knows what what could be between here and there.
Yeah.
So
Back and look. Yeah. Nice little tour.
yeah. On our way back, we ended up taking yet a different trail, and all of a sudden there's this Hawaiian flower necklace hanging from a tree, and the trail opened up to all these tents, these canvas tents and horses and people. And we've come to find out this is an outfitter. They had people from all over Canada. They come and they do horseback tours of the mountains. They take these people deep into the mountains, and they set up like a little tent village, and they do day trips on the horses. And it was incredible. There was all these like real legit cowboys, like just like you would imagine.
Well, it makes a hell of a lot more sense than walking. You know, through Harrison Flat, big open flats, just 2-3 miles.
Basically, we come down too far then.
Yeah, you're only.
Where are you headed?
Trying to get to Indian Head.
Oh, yeah.
That's rare in these
We just
parts.
followed the wrong. And they're the coolest guys, the coolest people, and here we are, just these novice hikers. One of us had a staff with a bone tied to it. Like, we were just role playing basically in the wilderness.
Carry onward.
They even said, like, this is really rare in these parts to see anybody walking or hiking or anything like that, and they informed us of a guy a few years back that had tried to hike this valley, and they still haven't found him. So I don't know if the cougars got him or what happened. He told us where we got lost, where we made the wrong turn, showed us where we are right now, and gave us a map and some tips on how to make sure we stayed on the trail.
Really nice guys. Pretty amazing that we found them.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were making fun of us as we left, but whatever.
Just really cool to see people. It's just like the trapper's cabin, people that live in completely different lifestyle that's quite rare. They basically have formed a way to create their lives in the mountains and live outdoors and share it with people, which is really, really neat.
We're trying to decide which falls trail not to take.
He's all across it, but it looks like people prefer to cross it this way. So, we should probably go that way so we don't run into trouble crossing. You've got the mountains all around you, forests all around, beautiful pine forests, and then this gorgeous meadow, and we just went off and laid down in the grass and just laid there and took it all in, took some pictures, and just sat there for a long time. And it was another one of those moments that really were unique to the trip, and really was one of the highlights, is coming up to Harrison Flats. Being in this big open space with big skies, it's a really nice place. We crossed Harrison Flats and went up into the trees, and we started hiking the trail, climbing up higher and higher into the mountains, gaining altitude. And we came across these sheep hunters. Apparently sheep hunting season had just opened, and they had a chuck wagon with horses hauling it. Well, they were actually lost themselves.
It looks like it's going up pretty good up ahead though, hey, or what? Been to Indian Head Lodge 3 times.
What's the
What we're doing this?
what's most common kind of fish you were pulling out of that lake?
There's bull trout and there's lake trout.
Well, there's lake trout.
So I missed.
Luckily for them, we showed up and we helped them move their wagon around so they could get back down to the river, give their horses a drink, and find a spot to camp.
Sharper if you can, Jace. Nope.
Yeah.
Good thing it's the softest ground there is.
You called it though.
I did call it, yeah. It's kind of fun early in the day for sleeping, isn't it? Nice. There. Nice. What do you think?
Our turn. Take us downhill.
handy, these crazy people out here.
Yeah. What are the chances?
I've been looking for a spot to turn around for quite a while. Move to the shit.
They're just great characters, especially the one old guy. He He told us some cool stories. He had been coming to these mountains for like 40 years.
This guy trails way back. Yeah. It doesn't show Harrison Flats.
The guy circled him. So are we're coming up here right now then? Yeah. Everybody we met was amazing, and every single one sticks with me to this day. We ended up climbing way up high on this trail, really high up into the mountains to where the trees were just really sparse and just these stunted things. It was like being on another planet almost. It was really a totally different landscape. It was we all felt like an eerie feeling there. I'm sure it was just the landscape affecting us, and we got really thirsty because there was no water up there at all. So we had hiked for another couple hours. We came to a fork in the trail, and I decided to go down it and look for water because it was going towards the river. And sure enough, found the river, found some water, and we found a great grassy area to make camp there.
Good clear water.
After we dropped our packs at this campsite we decided to stay at for the night, we went down to the river, and we're in this beautiful bend in the river where you can see down both sides of the ends of the mountain range. You can see down the mountains, and the sun was just coming through like all golden and shining on these bare mountains, and the light was like liquid gold over everything. It was beautiful. It's one of the most, if not the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen, the most beautiful moment as far as like the landscape and the lighting, everything. It was just perfect. And then I decided to do some fishing, ended up hooking into some really nice fish, one real nice brown, and then I decided to go a little further, push past this cut bank, and I found an eddy there and dropped my line in, and I remember seeing this massive shape come up and grab my spinner and take off with it, and end up hooking into what is today still the largest fish of my life. Bull trout. Between 8 and 10 pounds, like just glorious, and it's the absolute pinnacle of the trip for me. Like you can see it on my face. I was totally high on life there. It was pure ecstasy. It's one of the greatest moments I've ever had in my life, was that moment. To let him go and know that he's good. Feels good. That was had to be right around 10 pounds, that bull trout. Biggest trout I've ever caught. We're right up against the Banff National Park boundary line. We're kind of in the middle of what seems like a storm starting. It's blowing really crazy. The wind's getting really intense. We're also deep in grizzly bear country now, so we're having to be extra careful with our food and smells around camp and everything. Yeah, tomorrow we'll have a day of leisure, and then work our way out.
Two hopes.
Yeah.
No rain, no bears.
Yes.
Your luck might run thin. I want those.
couldn't have been more than an hour, hour and a half later, we all wake up to thunder. You start to see the flashes, and all of a sudden, the lightning was hitting all around us. You'd have your eyes closed, and you're under a tarp, and the lightning would strike, and it would flash white through your eyelids. It was that bright. Like, it was hitting everything, lightning everywhere, and we had nowhere to hide. We were so vulnerable. Each of us, laying in our hammocks, accepted death at any moment because it was just a barrage. Then we woke up in the morning. I was quite cold. The temperature started dropping down to around 0, and I had taken my spare tarp and wrapped that around my sleeping bag. And Jordan was soaking wet and cold because it was such a mild night. He decided to not worry too much about his configuration on his tarp, and his hammock sunk a little low. His tarp was kind of off to the side, and then it just filled with water. And so all his bedding was soaked, he was soaked, and the temperature was near 0. Matt was the only cozy one. He had the proper sleeping bag. We ended up being stuck in this area because we didn't have good rain gear. We weren't expecting the temperature to drop that cold, so we didn't mind getting wet if the temperature stayed up, but it didn't. It dropped from close to 30 Celsius down to almost 0. And so we ended up having to make a communal tarp shelter again that would catch heat from the fire and keep us dry. We didn't want to leave because we would get soaked, and we didn't know where we would end up camping, and we didn't want to risk having to deal with hypothermia or anything like that. So we just stayed put, played it safe to wait out the storm. We've got enough wood for the night, I believe, if we're careful today. And if it doesn't stop raining till tomorrow and it keeps going, we're gonna have to just pack up and just start hauling through it, and just keep hiking until hopefully the rain stops, and just do our best to stay warm enough that we don't perish. Here we go.
Catch it?
Cutoff Creek Public
okay, yeah.
Recreation. So we started there. Here's where we went through the flats yesterday. And we started climbing that incline up into the mountain. Around the edge of the mountain, we turned a little bit from the Clearwater right there. We came down closer, and then we got to the edge of the park right there. That's that brown line. And this trail that cuts down where this camp is and goes out to the Clearwater is right here. So we're right there. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We've done about 50K in 3 days. Generally not getting on the trail till about 11 o'clock, ending at around 6 each day. So I think, and that's stopping for snacks and photos and stuff like that. So I think we were pulling off a pretty respectable pace anyhow, even if we didn't fill out our days. We had more rain this year than the past several years combined. So
We were lucky to get those 3 days.
yeah, we were very lucky. I just changed the tarp up a bit to make it, to give it 3 sides instead of just 1, basically, with wings. That way it captures heat and it doesn't let wind kind of blow through this way.
Oh, it's smoking here though.
We have to move the fire forwards now. Alright, we'll just move it to there for now.
The new configuration with the tarp,
Is catching a lot of warmth.
yeah,
Much better.
keeping the wind out,
We stay till the rain stops or we run out of wood.
Yeah, it's pretty.
That's about it.
Yeah, two choices. Yeah.
There's now snow on the mountains. That was not there 12 hours ago.
We were trapped there for 2 days during the worst of the storm of just ice pellets, rain just pouring down like crazy. And we didn't want to leave because we would get soaked, and we didn't want to risk having to deal with hypothermia or anything like that. So we just stayed put, played it safe to wait out the storm. We went a little stir crazy. Thankfully, Matt had entertained us with shadow puppets on the tarp and some Black Sabbath and Jimi Hendrix, I believe. We had been there for 2 days, used up most of our batteries. Matt had to switch to filming with his cell phone, and also Jordan as well. We were using his phone. So we were pretty limited as far as documenting what happened after that. It was about 4 or 5 o'clock and the rain was very lightly coming down, and we saw the meagerest hole on the clouds of blue. We decided that the storm was almost over and let's just pack up and get out of here.
We had a good spot here.
Yeah,
It's good shelter.
Here maybe a little longer than we
was-
wanted, but
yeah.
it was a good.
very
Good
fortunate
entertainment.
to have found it in the
Yeah.
wood, or we'd have been some
wood.
cold pilgrims.
Yeah.
We got to Harrison Flats. Sure enough, we came into some sunshine, but then we looked back where we had come from, just clouds just swirling around there. However, the mountains were set up was holding that storm system in that area, so it couldn't clear up. And so we're hiking back. We're on our way towards 40 Mile. And we're trying to get there for the night. That was our goal, and we had to make that crossing again. Well, it had rained for 2 days straight, so the water that was knee deep is now waist deep or more in spots, and ice cold. And now it's not warm in the air either, it's ice cold temperatures outside the water as well. But we couldn't find a better place to cross. We're at the shallowest spot and decided to just go for it. And we got partway into the river and it started to lift us up off our feet. And it was really scary because this thing is just a raging river. And if you lose your footing, before you can even think again, you're gonna be way downriver because it's moving that fast. And it was a really risky thing to do, but we made it to 40 Mile, built a big fire, got warm, got dry, and we were happy as hell to be there, had a cigar, and it ended up being a great night. Things can go like a beautiful Eden to dangerous hell in an instant, really. Yeah, things can change so quickly. This amazing trip could go so wrong so easily just because of the elements. But we did it anyhow, and I don't regret any of it. We woke up our last day to beautiful, beautiful warm weather again. These wild horses were running around out there, and it was incredible to see these things and watch them interact with one another. The lead stallion was this big black horse, and he was keeping an eye on us anytime we were out there, and you could just see the power that this animal had and like the pride it had. You could hear and almost feel it like in your chest, like a deep bass of just their hooves hitting that meadow. It was a really magical moment.
There he is, leading the way.
Yeah. Hopefully this isn't a man-eating bog.
We're hiking back out, taking the same trail that we took on the way in, and I got ahead of these guys, and it's getting late in the evening, but we knew we would make it back to where the car was, and they got kind of disoriented and thought that maybe they were on the wrong trail because they hadn't seen me or caught up with me. They thought that they should have been back by now, blah blah blah, and so they ended up off on quad trails and then coming back and then going off on other trails, and they just want to get the hell out of there. But I remember I was waiting for them. I didn't know what was going on. I was waiting for them by the cart, and they didn't show up. Like an hour and a half went by, and the sun is starting to set behind the mountains.
Jordan and I have been walking for over an hour in the wrong direction, I guess, or maybe the right direction. We don't really know. But the sun's setting behind the mountains, and we're kind of walking aimlessly, so hopefully we find the right path. What's your thoughts?
I think that we need to find our staging coach area. We're on an ATV path right now, and I don't ever recall being on an ATV path. But there's an arrow saying JM here. Maybe Clint himself is also lost, or who knows. But if it's too late, we're gonna have to set up camp and then try again. Hopefully we find somebody, or there's enough cowboys out here that, well, we should run into somebody. It wasn't the right path that we were on. So we walk back, and we're gonna continue to go back and see what we can see.
There were some people further up the trail, back up the forestry road. It was a guy and his daughter, and they each had a side-by-side, and the one guy, he was an experienced tracker, and the guy immediately found their footprints. He figured out exactly how they were thinking just by looking at their footprints. They came here, decided to turn around and go back where they came from. So let's go that way. So we got back on the side-by-sides and drove, and then we stopped, turned off the side-by-side, and then he whistled. And sure enough, right around the corner, these guys are right there. This guy found your tracks, and
Both ways?
Yeah.
it's like, oh, looks like they were walking this way and turned around and went the other way.
How close were we?
Not very far. Jordan and Matt were so close to turning the corner and seeing where I was, where the car was, but they started doubting themselves and questioning themselves because they couldn't remember walking this far, and they turned around just before they were about to turn a corner and crest this hill, and they would have seen where we started.
Cross this one too? Oh yeah. Guys are right around the corner.
It's definitely something to take heed of. Always keep paying attention, take little mental pictures of where you're going constantly. We got rides back on the side-by-side, which was fun. If they would have went the wrong way and kept going, it's just wilderness forever. It was just another cool experience on the trip.
So we didn't go on the last turn. That was all we needed to do. The last one.
We'll be traveling from word of mouth. The 3 dumb pilgrims. 2 dumb pilgrims.
It was a great trip to kind of cut our teeth on that kind of an adventure. We learned a lot. For me, what I took away from that and how it's affected me is that trapper cabin. I remember thinking, wow, this is really amazing. It would be really cool to be able to be a trapper and have a piece of land like that to make a living off of the land. And a few months later, I've got my trapping license, and I've lined up a trap line to be a helper on, and I'm moving in that direction. So it really had a huge effect on me, that trip. It's altered the course of my life completely. Now I'm living in a canvas prospector tent, just like the tents that we saw on the trip. So it was another thing, opened my eyes up to the possibilities of living in a tent with a wood stove. And so that's how I'm living now, and it all really comes back to that trip. I took almost a whole month off of working to do it, really, it was a life-changing experience. Another life-changing summer, just like Temagami was.